If you have not heard about this, you're going to hear about it now. Yesterday, the Oklahoma Supreme Court decided to deny the right of repair to Tulsa massacre survivors. Now, I want to take you back and walk you through a timeline here. This was almost over a year ago when Tulsa massacre survivors actually announced that they were going to fight for repair for the Tulsa massacre. So this is going back to the days of the Black Wall Streets. Tulsa is the most famous one. That's the one a lot of people know about, but there were multiple Black Wall Streets in this country. There were Black Wall Streets in North Carolina as well. But in reference to the Tulsa massacre, 3 of those survivors who, again, they are still alive, they decided to bring forth a lawsuit to receive some sort of repair for the loss that they endured during the Tulsa massacre, the burning of one of the most popular Black Wall Streets. Listen to this.
What does justice look like to you?
Well, everything is beautiful and rebuilt and restored, and we just think it's just time now that we have justice on all of that, where we can live all our life, that type of life over again as a grown-up.
For 109-year-old Viola Fletcher and the 2 other known survivors of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, the wait for that justice will drag on. That's because an Oklahoma judge threw out their years-long legal efforts seeking reparations and rebuilding to address the historical damage done 102 years ago by the race massacre that destroyed Black Wall Street.
Let's pause here. So again, 1921. So I just want to remind everyone at that point in time, this was a time in the country where Black communities were actually thriving on their own. The dollar turned within that community. And so one of the more famous ones is the one in Tulsa, which was the Black Wall Street of Tulsa. As time went by and those communities did start to succeed and they were thriving, guess what? They were burned to the ground. Burned to the ground. So it's not the only Black Wall Street. There have been multiple Black Wall Streets that have happened, but it was burned to the ground. And we're talking about people that lost their homes, lost their businesses, and there was never any repair to those individuals. That is a problem. Now, for those who say that, well, we can't do reparations for slavery because those people are no longer alive, there has to be survivors, which, by the way, I disagree with that, because if you base it on lineage, you actually can. And it was owed due to General Sherman's promise to the freed slaves, which was 40 acres and a mule, which did not transpire. But in this particular situation, when we talk about Tulsa, these were living people that were alive back then who are still alive today. So you cannot use that excuse when it comes to Tulsa, because these are the survivors that brought forth the lawsuit. Let's go on.
Judge Caroline Wall sided with the state and city of Tulsa, who argued in part that being connected to a historical event doesn't give a person unlimited rights to seek compensation. And joining me now is Demario Solomon Simmons, civil rights attorney and founder of Justice for Greenwood. Demario, it is great to see you. I have to say, the argument that people have normally made against reparations is, well, the victims of enslavement or some other wrong are long dead. We can't compensate people who are alive because the victims are dead. But now you have a case where the victims are alive. There are 3 people who are alive, and they're still saying we still can't have reparations. Make that make sense, because it seems like a heads you lose, tails I win.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a moving of the goalpost when it comes to Black people and our racial justice claims. And you're right, Joy, 109 years old. Mother Fletcher was 7 years old at the time. Mother Randall, 108, she was 6 years old at the time. They saw, they felt, they heard, and they witnessed and experienced the race massacre. They're still here. And that's the thing that this case is so important nationally, because We have the photos, we have the video, we have the hundreds of insurance claims. We have living people who are saying this happened to me, and no one is disputing that this happened to them. Yet the city of Tulsa, the county, the chamber, and the state are saying, we don't care that this happened to you. We're not going to do anything for you, your families, or the community.
Let me play what you said last time that you were here on the show about the defendants in this case.
Now, again, I want to remind you, this interview here, this was 11 months ago. 11 months ago, they were trying to fight it then.
We know that the defendants, their strategy was to have these beautiful individuals, they want them to die, point blank. They was hoping that during this delay that they wouldn't be here any further longer. But they both told me they're going to be here for the long haul.
And I mean, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like they want to go back to the original argument saying there are no living victims.
Absolutely. And that's why Justice for Greenwood, our organization that's fighting on behalf of these survivors and descendants, that's why we've had a holistic plan, because we know that the city and the state, they just want these people to be dead so then they can continue to utilize the massacre to raise more money for themselves. Joy, as you know, the city used the massacre and everything to raise over $30 million for their own benefit to create a tourism attraction. Yet they don't want to give one penny, one dime to any of the survivors or the descendants. And that's why this decision to dismiss us is so hurtful. It is so unbelievable because, as you know, Joy, last year the same judge said we can move forward. But it's not over. We're going to appeal this case to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. We know that's a conservative venue, but the law is so clear here. If they would just do the rule of law, and again, we know how that is when it comes to black people, but if they just follow the law, we will actually be successful to get back into court. In the meanwhile, we're calling on the federal government, President Joe Biden, our dear sister Kristen Clark at the Department of Justice, to come in and open a criminal investigation that's never happened in Greenwood. They can do this today. Right now, today, they have the authority to do that, and we're asking them to do it.
I just want to pause for just a second, and I want to bring up a point. So let's talk about reparations for just a second. Again, this was 11 months ago. We haven't even gotten to what happened the other day. We're working our way through. You have to remember that reparations were paid to Japanese Americans that were a part of the internment camps. Remember the Japanese internment camps in the United States? There were reparations paid to them, as there should have been, but also to their descendants. I totally agree with that. I'm not here to cancel that out and say it shouldn't have happened at all. Totally agree with that. You know who signed that into law? Who signed that and approved it? Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan. Of all people. Okay. When it comes to survivors of the Holocaust, there were reparations that were paid to them by Germany, which again, I totally agree with that. That should have happened. But did you know that even today, there are still reparations that are paid to survivors of the Holocaust, but this time from the United States? And I want to show you one that happened recently, because this is the thing that kills me when people say, we can't do this for descendants of slavery because it's divisive. It's problematic. We don't need to divide the people. But nobody says anything about it dividing the people when it applies to other groups. And I'll show you right here, because this one kind of flew under some people's radar, but it didn't fly up under mine. In New York, this was just recently, January 24th, 2024. Governor Hochul announces Holocaust Claims Processing Office secured over 183 millions for victims and beneficiaries. Governor Hochul, New York. This was her response to October 7th, right? So after October 7th, she decided, you know what? We got to do something to protect the people, to protect Jewish people, right? So again, this time, look who's paying for this. So that was recent. January 29th, 2024. Look, don't believe me? This is coming directly from the governor, the New York governor's page. Governor Hochul today announced that the New York State Department of Financial Services Holocaust Claim Processing Office, which assists Holocaust victims and their heirs recover stolen assets, has helped secure and return over $183 million in compensation to victims and their heirs for bank, insurance, and other material loss. January 29th of 2024. But the survivors of the Tulsa massacre, their claims were dismissed. Their claims were rejected. And so this goes to what I've said over and over again. This only happens to one group in this country. Imagine if it were the other way around. Imagine if instead of seeing Joy Reid sitting here and this gentleman, imagine if it was Alan Dershowitz sitting here and Noah Tishby. This wouldn't even have been a problem. The repair would have been made. It is only when it's us. It's us. And I would argue there's more repair that needs to be done for indigenous people in this country as well. But even indigenous people got treaties. Let's continue on with this interview, and then I'll show you a video of one of the survivors speaking in court.
You know, U.S. military planes were used as well. Jonathan, who produced this segment, he went looking for the ruling by Judge Caroline Wall, and at first thought he didn't find it because he just found this 3-sentence, upon hearing the arguments of counsel, this case is dismissed with prejudice. That's the ruling. She didn't even explain her ruling. She just wrote 3 quick lines and get out of my courtroom. To me, that seems like an insult, particularly, as you said, since the city of Tulsa has used these people and their tragedy to earn money off of them.
It is an insult. And Joy, when I found out about this by a reporter calling me late Friday evening, and it was a gut punch. And then I felt so bad for myself, but then feeling bad, I had to call my clients and tell them what happened. And when they asked me, well, what's the reasoning? And I have to tell them, I don't know. The judge didn't even give us the decency to explain it to us in a written order, and outside of just putting this in on Friday night. So it's something that is just should not have happened. The standard that we were having, the bar was so low on a motion to dismiss in this type of situation. And for us not to have any type of a reasoning, it leaves you, the only thing you can think of is this is another chapter in a 102-year book where they continue to say no. They continue to find ways to say no, regardless of when you bring the claim, how you bring the claim, or who brings the claim. But that's why we're going to still continue to fight. We're going to appeal this case. We're going to look at other avenues to get these people justice and the entire Black community from Greenwood, because this is a case that impacts all of Black America's racial justice claims. As you stated, Joy, we have living survivors, we have video, we have pictures, we have millions of dollars in insurance claims, and they're still going to say no. This cannot stand in America. And I ask everyone that believes in truth, justice, and reparations for these survivors and Black folks to join with us at Justice for Greenwood, justiceforgreenwood.org. Get with us, stand with us, and let these 3 survivors know that they have a nation of people that's not just praying for them, but is actively in the fight for justice for them.
Well, that was 11 months ago, and now we're going to fast forward to what happened this week, because that claim, it was denied. The Oklahoma Supreme Court dismissed their claim. They are not going to receive any type of repair, and it's really embarrassing and it's shameful in 2024 in this country that this is still an issue. This is still an issue. No repair has been made. Again, it happens to one particular group. Now, I want you to hear from one of the survivors. Tulsa for decades covered up the murder of up to 300 Black residents of Greenwood, known as the Tulsa Race Massacre. A judge just dismissed the lawsuit of 3 survivors who lost everything when their wealthy community was torched. Here's the shocking story of one survivor. So yes, it was called Black Wall Street because it was actually a wealthy, thriving community. The community was doing really well. That was never supposed to happen. Everybody listen to me when I say this. That was never supposed to happen. When Africans were brought to this country as slaves, they were never intended to be anything more than that. Does everybody understand that? When Africans were brought to this country as slaves to produce free labor, they were never meant to do anything other than that. But some things changed. Slaves were freed. Then there was the question of, what are we going to do with slaves now? What do we do with them now that they're free? Black people started to build their own communities. You have to realize it was still segregated. So Black people started to build their own communities. Tulsa was one of them that was actually very thriving, very successful, became a wealthy community. That was one of the more popular Black Wall Streets. But if you look this up, you'll see there were other Black Wall Streets in the United States. They were burned to the ground when all of a sudden it was noticeable that they were thriving, not just by citizens, white citizens, but by the government. The government burned these communities to the ground. They participated in this, and the government should have to pay repair. Listen to her tell you what happened.
My name is Viola Ford Fletcher. I'm a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. 2 weeks ago, I celebrated my 107th birthday. On May 31st in 21, I went to bed at my family's home in Greenwood, neighbors of Tulsa. The neighborhood I felt asleep in that night was rich, not just in terms of wealth, but in culture, community, heritage, and my family had a beautiful home. The night of the massacre, I was awakened by my family. My parents and 5 siblings were there. I was told we had to leave, and that was it. I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see Black men being shot, Black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see Black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. When my family was forced to leave Tulsa, I lost my chance of an education. I never finished school past the 4th grade. I have never made much money in my country. For 70 years, the city of Tulsa and its Chamber of Commerce told us that the massacre didn't happen, like we didn't see it with our own eyes. We lost everything that day, our homes, our churches, our newspapers, our theaters, our lives. Greenwood represented all the best of what was possible for Black people in America and for all the people. No one cared about us for almost 100 years. We and our history have been forgotten, washed away. I am a 107-year-old and have never been seen justice. I pray that one day I will.
So you see, here's the problem, folks. People talk about like the civil rights movement and they talk about that time period as though that was a long time ago. That wasn't that long ago. That wasn't that long ago. So it's just things that you got to think about. My grandparents were alive during the civil rights movement. My grandparents, my parents went to segregated schools. Everyone understand that? I was the first person in my family to go to an integrated school. I'm not that old. So this is more recent than people realize. Now, think about how some of these things have changed in this country. If you've ever been to New York City, you go to Central Park. It's a tourist thing to do, I know. Central Park was once Seneca Village. I say this every time because a lot of people don't know this. Central Park was once Seneca Village. It was a Black community. They don't want to tell you about that. Look it up. Look at what they did to those people. Beacon Hill in Boston, also another tourist destination, was a Black neighborhood. The Black people were pushed out. White people came in. If you go to Beacon Hill today, you mainly see wealthy white people living there. That was an all Black neighborhood. It's just insane. It's insane when you think about these things. Gentrification been happening, fam. It was a more violent form of gentrification where they were bombing people's neighborhoods, where they were setting their homes on fire to get them out. Similar to what you see happening in the West Bank. Hello. Destroying people's homes, setting their homes on fire to get them out. This has been happening. Now they find ways to do it a little bit more legally. Build a luxury condo next to your apartment building and get you out that way because the property taxes increase. And the landlords realize that wealthier people are moving into the neighborhood so they can increase the rent for you as well. But there has been no repair, no repair. And I'll say it again, if it was another group, this would have never happened. If it was another group, they would have had their repair. The same way Kathy Hochul rushed forward in New York and said, let's go ahead and send this money and this repair to survivors of the Holocaust. And look how long representatives like Jim Clyburn has been sitting and dancing on that H-140 bill in Congress. When in any other group, they can move very quickly. Look how quick they move for Ukraine. Look how quick they move for Israel. Look how quick they move for survivors of the Holocaust. You don't never see them move that quick for us. Never. These people have been fighting this for years. People have been asking for reparations, which are owed to descendants of slavery for years. And every time there's an excuse as to why they can't do it. It's divisive. It'll separate people. Those people still aren't alive. Well, here was a case where the people are alive and the court still said no. And people got to understand, for those of you who immigrated to the United States, particularly the people of color, you need to understand the reason why you were able to come here and have the life that you do is because of the work that was done by descendants of slavery and slaves in this country. We made it possible for you to come here. When we talk about history, we're going to talk about real history, not the history that's in your textbooks. Free labor. Hundreds of years of free labor, never paid for, no repair. Redlining, Jim Crow, burning Black Wall Streets, the crime bills, the war on drugs. A never-ending cycle that has happened for years. And there has never been any repair. There is one particular group in this country that our government and the corporations do not want to repair, and that is descendants of slavery. And you can take it however you want, but it's a fact. Even Cenk Uygur, this is the interesting part, even TYT, even Cenk Uygur had to call it out because this is ridiculous. Listen to this.
We took the labor of African Americans in this country, just stole it for hundreds of years. How much of a debt is owed for that? So you can't make that up. It's too big a number. But at the same time, you have to know that this country was built on the backs of Black people. And so I don't think that Americans overall have a deep enough appreciation for that. For, hey, now we have this wild disparity in wealth. Where did that wild disparity come from? It didn't come from, they're not working hard enough, and this idiot Republican saying things like welfare queens. No, it came from this history. And if you don't teach that, you're not teaching real history.
Even Cenk Uygur had to call it out. Now, do you guys see why I was so adamant about Bernie Sanders needing to have a reparations plan as a part of his platform? Now, do you see why I was pushing that the way that I did when he was running for office? Now, do you see why I continued to say that was problematic, that he solely just wanted to focus on class and not the racial issue? Now, do you see why? Because Bernie Sanders, his people, they got repair. They They got repair. And he knows that. And Bernie Sanders knows damn well that the reparations did help. So for him to turn his back then on the descendants of slavery and say, no, I don't agree with that. I don't want to focus on that. How about you give yours back then, Bernie? How about you give yours back? I ain't see Bernie Sanders say he want to give it back. Things we got to think about. Things we got to talk about. It is a problem. It is a problem. What just happened in Oklahoma, that can happen in any state or any city across this country for any other time. Descendants of slavery try to get repair. Pay attention to what happened there. Pay attention to what happened in Illinois, in Evanston, Illinois. We are always rejected when it comes to what we are owed. And if you feel that's divisive for you, you need to ask yourself why you feel that way. Because it wasn't divisive for the Japanese Americans and it wasn't divisive for the Holocaust survivors. It only seems to be divisive when it is us. Let's go to some of the comments. That got me fired up. That really, when I heard that story, that really pissed me off. To see those people sitting there. Manimus says they have no money. They sent it all to Ukraine. And this was the foreign policy piece, right? Eric says generational wealth is a big deal. This is the foreign policy piece. This is why I say you got to connect the two. Because the thing is this, if our government has billions to give to Ukraine and to give to Israel and everybody else, they got money to pay reparations. That's how I see it. Donna says with the assistance of the U.S. government. Yes. With the assistance of the U.S. government, destroyed these people's homes because they didn't want Black people to have anything. Do people understand this? They didn't want you to have it. And this is still the same today. It's still the same reason why it is more difficult. Unless you're a celebrity, it's a little bit more difficult for even a Black person that has money to buy a home in certain neighborhoods, particularly certain white neighborhoods. The real estate agent don't want to show you the home. The neighbors don't want you there because they don't think you should have it. And some people may not say that, but I'll say it. JB says many Black neighborhoods were not only burned to the ground, many were also put underwater as well. Some lakes are former Black neighborhoods. That's right. Deneen says there is a 3D model of Black Wall Street as it was in 1921. The businesses, doctors, lawyers, they were thriving and completely self-sufficient, and the dollar turned in that neighborhood. Karinka, my great-grandmother's pregnant great-grandmother walked the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma, and I feel a similar sadness for the Black community that suffered here. Natives have free health care at least. And thank you, Coffee Lover. It's odd. The same people that support giving reparations to the Zionists are also the same people who deny reparations to everyone else. There it is. And thank you, Mad Matt. Claudia De La Cruz supports reparations. Vote PSL. Thank you for that, Matt. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Sabby Hochul, yes, but look who did it earlier. Thank you. I'll go ahead and pull that up. Thanks, Roger. Okay. So also under Barack Obama, see, because a lot of people don't remember, the Obama administration has awarded $12 million for assistance to Holocaust survivors. Everybody hear that? The Obama administration has awarded $12 million for assistance to Holocaust survivors. So that was under Obama. Barack Obama, the first Black president. That happened under him. So instead of putting forth or pushing forth an effort for repair for descendants of slavery, his administration gave money to Holocaust survivors. And again, I'm not saying they should not receive that money. What I am saying is that there is one particular group where it's been long overdue. And we have not received any type of reparations. So for all the people who say, yay, first Black president, look at who he helped. Blackface, high place. That's it. Not trying to help you, though. So keep that in mind. And for any other group, if you feel that you've been wrong in any particular way, you have every right to pursue your own claim. I'm not here to tell you you can't.